Good morning, folks. Good morning, folks. Accidentally went live. Give me one moment. I will be right there. Okay, so everybody got to see my frenzied preparation. Wasn't that fun? Glad to know the sound is working. Just one moment. I'm switching over to this. Happens as in the questions and answers section, and once again, I am very sorry. It's just one of those things. A frenzied morning, actually, and it's going to be an abbreviated discussion as well. I'm going to be taking my son mountain biking. I didn't know this until last night, so in any event, we'll go ahead and keep this going for as long as we possibly can, roughly an hour, and then and see how much we can discuss. Good morning to all of you, and good to see that you folks have shown up. And once again, sorry for the craziness there. Just was setting up and hit the wrong button. What can you do? So thank you, Going Ballistic. I appreciate that. Family first. Yes, we definitely do agree about that. Okay, so we'll get right into it. The reason I chose this particular topic is because it actually came in as a tie in a vote a couple of weeks ago, and then in second place 1 week ago. So it seems to me that we should just go ahead and discuss it, and that is new forms of next generation propulsion. What should we do first? What should we ultimately be working towards? What's the best form of next generation propulsion? And I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit more distance here. The camera's like a little close, and I didn't get a chance to really make any adjustments. So in any event, yeah, I am wired. That is true. I'm quite wired. This is my second cup of coffee in roughly 30 minutes. So yeah, I'm quite wired. Kind of have to be. I was up really late cleaning the house, trying to make it presentable because my son's going to be with me for the next 3 days. Okay, so all of that having been talked about, let's get right into it. NASA is going to have a test firing of a nuclear thermal rocket in 2024. It seems that that's the direction that they're definitely heading. Yes, bike helmets are a must. You're right, Going Ballistic. We definitely embrace that. Although my son doesn't embrace it on his skateboard. It's not cool to wear a helmet while you're skating. I don't know what to say about that, but we'll move on from that. So, in any event, the matter of next generation propulsion, it seems that NASA is very, bent on nuclear thermal. It seems that we're really close, actually, to making that a reality, and I find it to be an interesting, hello, Cyclonics. I find it to be an interesting coincidence that 2024 is when they're going to do their test firing, and also when we're planning to put boots on the moon. I find that to be a very interesting coincidence, and I can't help but wonder if they intend to go to Mars using nuclear thermal propulsion, if that is the long-term objective. But is that the right objective? is that the type, if we had all the choices in the world to look at, and we weren't biased by what NASA happens to be working on at the moment, what would we regard as being the best form of propulsion? So we've got people typing right now. I know what my opinion is, but I'm not going to say it for a bit. So we'll see what everybody else has to say. We got 3 people typing now, including some new folks. Some propulsion tests have been carried out on the X-37B. All speculation as to what was tested. Maybe a new ion type engine. Good morning, by the way, Joe Hero. Thank you for coming by. And I don't know if this is your first time or second time. I think I may have seen your name before. In any event, I know that you're pretty new to the channel, so thank you very much for coming by. Okay, so in any event, yeah, the X-37B has always been a really big mystery. It's unmanned, but yeah, maybe we are trying out some new type of ion engine. Is ion propulsion the best way? Obviously, everything that we've used, we've used ion propulsion already, but only on very slow-moving probes, probes that have all the time in the world to reach their destinations. By the way, I see that we have almost 80 people signed on already, so thank you very much, guys, for coming by, to our audience and to our participants on Discord and Patreon. Thank you so much. So a Hall effect thruster says going ballistic. Yeah, Hall effect thrusters are largely regarded as being one of the most efficient types of ion thrusters, and so I think that is that's a very compelling idea, and one that I think that Sierra Nevada intends to use for some of their interplanetary ambitions, assuming those actually get off the ground, but what they have planned. So Framrick says go for the easy one first, fission direct nuclear thermal. Yeah, it makes sense. That is one that we definitely understand the best. Excuse me, because we've already done it. Obviously, back in the 70s, it was tested extensively. It was Wernher von Braun's ambition to go to Mars, putting a nuclear thermal rocket into the top stage of the Saturn V, or a modified version of it. This is an idea that's been around forever. And honestly, this is a type of technology that we should have had a very long time ago and just haven't. I've always found that to be incredibly frustrating. I've thought about doing another video about nuclear thermal, simply because the one that I did do was some time ago and only has about 5,000 or so views, just because it was when I had a lot fewer subscribers. So I might do something new on that, just to kind of keep people. Also, there may be some updates to talk about on our progress. So we have a little bit more typing going on. Chuck Norris and a BB gun propel me to Mars and just get me there already. Yeah, well, who cares about the propulsion as long as we can get to Mars? Yeah. Chuck Norris especially. I think that guy, his acting got worse as the years went on. Excuse me. There are some actors who have never received any classical training or any professional training, and there's a lot of their movies tend to just get worse, and their acting gets worse as time goes on instead of better. And it's not just him. I've seen that with a lot of people. Okay, so we got Framrick typing again. And by the way, everybody jump in on the conversation. I'd be interested as to, what we should be looking for and why. What I'm interested, the type of propulsion I'm interested in has not been mentioned yet. So there are many different kinds that we could look at. If we had all the flexibility in the world to start developing things, if we could start developing whatever the hell we wanted, what would we develop? What would we be working on first? That's what I was hoping to talk about. A lot of people are typing right now, so in the meantime, if you guys want to be part of the discussion, it's all in the description of the video as to how to become a Patreon supporter, how to activate your Discord benefits, etc. It's all there. And by the way, this is being brought to you ad-free again. I do my best to, and the recorded version will be ad-free also. I do my best to try to make that the case with as many of these as I possibly can. Helium-3 based fusion drive, says Timothy Albiz. Are you brand new? I think you might be as well. So welcome. Like the Expanse series on Amazon, yes. I did an episode about fusion-based drives, and they are incredible in terms of what they can accomplish. And if we were to assume that fusion was a technology that was just around the corner as opposed to always being 30 years away, I would say that would be an excellent idea. And I have expressed frustration over the fact that we spend so much of our money on fusion bombs, hydrogen bombs, and yet not nearly as much on fusion power. So yeah, I think that's a really good idea, and one it would be great if we had it at our available. Thoughts on Orion, says Cyclonics. I've always felt a little funny about blowing up nuclear bombs to make your vehicle move. At the same time, it's about the most constructive use of nuclear weapons that I can think of. I have mixed feelings about it, I guess, because it would require that we take a lot of fissionable materials up into orbit. But then again, it would result in a very fast ship, there are issues to it, positives and negatives. So I guess my feelings on it, I hate to be so. I hate to have such mixed feelings and not take a solid position on Orion, but and for those who are not familiar with that, the idea is taking very small thermonuclear explosions one after another right behind the ship or a distance behind the ship with a large plate, providing the force of the explosion impacting that plate and providing the velocity. And even that idea has been tested in a basic form way in the past when they were a lot more easy about nuclear weapons. Framrick says, I'd love to see laser pulsed fusion using DT to start with, but they might need Topaz type fission reactor to power the lasers, which is current tech. Very interesting. So a lasers to pulse lasers to generate the necessary heat in order to power the fusion reaction. Any fusion reaction, of course, requires an immense amount of heat in order to make things fuse. And that being the case, that's always been the problem with fusion, is the fact that we haven't been able to put enough energy to make things fuse without putting more energy than we get back out of it, energy positive. And that's been something we've been struggling against for a long time. Tom says, if we want to leave the solar system and see our families again, we need to concentrate on faster than light or warp drives. Well, that's extremely advanced. And there's been a lot of talk, the Alcubierre warp drive. Eventually I think I'm going to do an episode about that, just because people do discuss it a lot. People do talk about it. It is a fiercely debated topic as to whether or not folding space and going faster than light that way is possible. But it doesn't violate the laws of physics Just the energy requirements are insane, although people have talked about alternate methods that don't require such huge amounts of energy. Eastern Drive says going ballistic. Actually, wow, I'm actually unfamiliar with that one. I'd be interested to learn more about it. I'm sorry. So many of these types of propulsions, I don't know them all. Via the moon and a mass driver, says another space nut. Well, so far, mass drivers, even on the moon, do require a huge amount of g-force acceleration in order to get things up to speed, depending, I guess, on how long you make the rail. I mean, if it was kilometers and kilometers and kilometers long, that might make a big difference in terms of how much time you have to get up to speed. And once again, for those who are unfamiliar, a mass driver uses electromagnetic forces on a low G object like the moon in order to get things up to speed. So a big maglev train essentially that goes into space. Timothy is brand new. Timothy Albies, well, thank you very much for joining us. I really appreciate it. Means a lot to me. Okay, so kind of like Orion, but using fusion pellets, says Framrick. Yes, very true. Going ballistic says, how can his acting get worse when it was already terrible? Yeah. Yeah, military use rather than practical. Thank you, Timothy. I appreciate you saying that. There have been, I've actually had some discussions and debates on in the comments about this particular issue, but in my opinion, we just spent entirely too much on thermonuclear arsenals. There's no way we needed 50,000 nuclear warheads, which is what the combined arsenals of the United States and the Soviet Union were. That's just that was just ridiculous overkill back then, and so much money was used on that, and who knows where we would be in terms of fusion power if we didn't do that, if we had put that money into something else. Epstein Drive. Boy, going ballistic, you're coming up with some very interesting ones. I'm going to have to look some of these up. Ryan, the space update talks about there's so many experimental drives out there, none have yet been fully proven. Yeah, nuclear thermal is about the closest when we're talking about that. Although, and now I'm going to go ahead and just say it, the solar sails have been proven to at least work. Now we need to make solar sails functional when it comes to using lasers, and I think orbital lasers are the way to go with that. I'll describe a little bit more as to why I think that's one of the best ways to go about traveling interplanetary and perhaps even interstellar. But nevertheless, okay, so on top of that, okay, Jimyo, you may be new as well. If so, welcome. Like I say, some of these names I don't recognize. So thank you very much. Wow, all these new people, it's awesome. So antimatter propulsion, yes, that's something else that I talked about briefly. It generated quite a lot of debate on the in the comments section as to whether or not it's something that we could do. Warp drive would be nice, albeit seemingly impossible on the gravity side of things, says Jimyo. Yeah, that's one of many problems with the Alcubierre drive, which is probably the most compelling idea of it. I'm starting to fall behind here. But in any event, antimatter propulsion, yes, and one of my most recent videos talks about that and how there is natural antimatter in the solar system that we could perhaps harvest and use. And thank you, another space nut. That's one of my favorite quotes. I am become death, the destroyer of worlds, from Oppenheimer. Yes, I don't think there's too many people who regretted what he did and what he developed more than Robert Oppenheimer. Punic Wars. I know you've got to be new unless you've changed your ID or something like that because I'm a history major. The Punic Wars are very interesting to me. So in any event, is there a problem with a long rail on the moon? Isn't the lack of atmosphere means you can just slowly accelerate? Yes, if you built a really, really, really long rail for slow acceleration up to the up to the speed to gain escape velocity, you should, in theory, be able to accomplish it. It also might need to be angled upward, as opposed to following the curvature of the moon. But nevertheless, it is a possibility. As a matter of fact, we even talked about that kind of propulsion on bodies like Mars, too. Okay, Ryan says alongside new propulsion, we'll probably need a new type or mix of fuel. NASA have recently announced that they're going to start using green fuel, an alternative to hydrazine, the highly toxic fuel commonly used by spacecraft today. NASA says that the new green fuel will also increase efficiency in space. Yes, as a matter of fact, Rocket Lab, and I just released a video about them about 12 hours ago or something, I guess. They are using greener fuels and more stable fuels than most folks. So in what they use. But they're an organization that can turn on a dime, a small company that can make changes and make plans very quickly. Tom says, make a rail of the mass driver, wrap around the moon a few times. That should be long enough to get some humans moving fast. Yep, that's true. If we spent the time on it and the effort, yeah, I don't even know if we'd need to go around the moon a few times. I think that I know that people have done the equations, and I think a rail that's a few hundred kilometers long might actually be long enough. I'm not, and I guess it depends on the mass of what you're trying to accelerate as well. Okay, the fusion drive. Thank you on the Epstein drive. I appreciate it, Timothy. Like I say, sometimes I know that there are a lot of alternative drives that I have talked about that I've researched, but I'll tell you, there's some that I don't know, and especially some of the names. Thank you very much for that. Essentially the one from The Expanse. I don't know what I was thinking there. Punic Wars, warp drive, antimatter is not such next gen. It is next gen, and yeah, that is arguably true. There are those who think that that's not the case. Some of the reports, and these are peer-reviewed studies, by the way, that were funded by NASA, believe that we could have functioning antimatter propulsion within the next 60 to 70 years. I mean, within less than a century. Now, is that true? Who knows? But at the same time, these studies were funded by NASA and peer-reviewed. It's not just some crazy raving lunatic like me saying it. It's somebody who actually was accountable for what they were writing. But warp drive, yeah, that one is a little different. Framrick says good drives in spacecraft will depend on good power sources like helium-3 fusion or proton-boron fusion, so we need to crack these. Yeah, we do. In the worst kind of way. Fusion will change so many things, not just in terms of propulsion, but also in terms of in terms of power sources. I mean, there's so many things that fusion will change. Yeah, we definitely need to crack that. We got more people who are jumping on. Thank you very much, by the way, to our friends on the other side of the planet who've signed on, or also people who've just decided to get up early in the morning, or people in Europe the middle of your day, wherever you are. Thank you so much for being part of this. Please leave a like and subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Would love to have you as part of my little family so I can destroy this coffee cup, the dreaded coffee cup of the Boeing Starliner that I have sitting blasphemously next to the Crew Dragon. And once I reach 40,000 subs, I'm going to blow this thing into small bits. Okay, so yeah, yes. Well, once again, I guess I did guess right. Punic Wars. You are brand new, so yeah. Sometime maybe we can talk about the Punic Wars. That's one of my favorite subjects. Okay, Jimmy, yeah, you're definitely new as well. Oh, the first in 1,000 subscribers. Wow. Okay. Well, thank you for being part of this channel for so long. That's wonderful. Thank you. Yes, now Going Ballistic is talking about the Epstein drive from the Expanse. An Eastern drive would be powered by astral projection. Okay. Timothy Albius is Rocket Lab. Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I decided to go kind of a different route on Rocket Lab. I didn't want to just talk about, their accomplishments up to this point. I wanted to focus more on what they had planned in the long run and what made them different. And talking a lot more about their interplanetary and moon missions, that sort of thing. What makes them more than just a small sat provider? And yeah, I'd watched some of the episodes on YouTube, very good ones about Rocket Lab, but they were all kind of about that, about their niche, the small sat into low Earth orbit, that sort of thing. Wanted to talk about other stuff. Okay. Space elevator release payloads at the top, says Framrick. Yeah, well, space elevators have huge problems here, but not nearly as much of a problem in other places. Space elevators on the moon and Mars are very, very possible. So yeah, that's definitely something that we should be seriously looking at. I'm a big fan of space elevators. Thank you very much. A link has just been thrown on for the Epstein drive. I appreciate that. I go and launch the Mug Orbital, show Blue Origin how it's done. Yeah, that's another point that I couldn't help but make in the Rocket Lab video, was another slam on Blue Origin. Not once again. I said it in the video, but I'll say it again. I don't. This isn't a personal grudge. It really isn't. Yeah, I got mad at them because they tossed me off their property, but it's the fact of the matter is it's ridiculous. A $1.6 billion company like Rocket Lab. That's it. $1.6 billion is all that company is worth. And look at how many things they've tossed into orbit versus Blue Origin, with the wealthiest guy on the planet backing them up, and yet they still haven't gotten anything into orbit. And they make a big deal out of their suborbital experiments. If I were them, I'd be embarrassed about all that. I don't know. Anyway, I'll stop ranting about that. But it's just, I think they're doing a disservice to the private space industry by going as slow as they are with the resources that they have at their disposal. A trebuchet, says Going Ballistic. Well, the trebuchet concept in orbit is very, very solid, using some sort of, as a matter of fact, they've talked about using the lunar gateway to provide a little bump, having its rectilinear halo orbit providing a little bump to spaceships in order to provide a little bit of extra speed. Could you scale that up? Maybe. Once you get something into orbit, use something like that. I would say that we should be using that regardless of what kind of propulsion we end up using. Space elevator. Timothy Albus says that a space elevator on the moon is within our tech level. Yes, it is. At least in my opinion. There are people who argue with me about that in the comments, but private investment, I think, is the key, he says, to that sort of megastructure and project. I agree. I think that governments is going to be an involved process, And I think that governments are going to be hesitant to invest in that. And I think that any private organization that chooses to invest in it are going to be able to dominate what's going on the moon. They're going to be able to exploit the moon like nobody else can. So there should be somebody who's really interested in that. Some multi-billionaire really needs to invest in it. Cyclonic says, do I think that combustion drivers will ever be retired, or will they continue to be a viable propulsion? In other words, the types of engines that we're currently using. That's hard to say. I don't think currently it doesn't seem that we'll ever really be able to do that. That taking off is ever really going to be a possibility without that kind of propulsion. But cyclonics, there is an exception. If we can come up with some kind of a space elevator that takes us a significant distance out of low Earth orbit into geosynchronous orbit, for example, if we were able to come up with something like that, then we might not have need for conventional rocket engines anymore. Then we could switch over entirely to alternate forms of propulsion. Timothy says government laid foundations, private enterprise, and common people need to make the next moves. I do agree, and corporations really need to be more bold about this, and they're just not. They're looking for quicker returns on investment. The companies that actually have the guts to go for things that are ambitious don't have as the money that they need. It's frustrating. It's very frustrating. And so you end up with SpaceX kind of being, the one big player. Although, companies like Rocket Lab are trying to make a difference as well. Okay, let's see. If you use the kilopower reactor to run several ion engines, that's a tech that will be ready in the next few years. Yeah, that's an interesting idea. Several ion engines, of course, with several ion engines, you also need a fair amount of propellant in order to ionize. But still, you can use you use electromagnetic force to drive these ions out at extreme speeds. So yeah, that might be a good idea indeed. The faster your propellant goes, the longer it lasts, the more efficient your engine. Ion power has a lot of things. Oh, launch the cup with a trebuchet. Sorry, going ballistic. Yes, that's an interesting idea. Although, I don't know, with my camera skills, I'd probably miss the whole thing. Whereas blowing things up or something that I've been able to do on camera pretty effectively. Excuse me. Or to be more specific, my son has proven to be very effective at filming things being blown up. Okay, so Framrick says, I'm waiting for the vacuum energy drive quantum ramjet. Wow. Yes, now we're looking for some very advanced technology. But in any event, yeah, that's some interesting stuff. Perhaps something I should make a video about, to be honest. That's definitely, again, next gen stuff. Trampolines seem to work for Mr. Musk. Yes, Jim Yo, that is very funny. Yes, he did get the trampoline to work, and once again, as a response to that Russian joke that most people know, when they were making fun of the fact that we couldn't launch humans into space for almost a decade. Which, by the way, was pretty doggone embarrassing, and I think the Russians had a lot of room to make fun of us, to be honest. But still, we got our trampolines working, and now we've got capsules heading into. We've got the Crew Dragon, which is better than anything that the Russians have, anything that the Russians are likely to have for a long time. Long game investment will pay off, says Timothy. Yes, indeed. We need more of Elon's viable concept. Yeah, we do need more people like Elon. It's as simple as that. I wish there were more people like him. I hate to, once again, I don't always agree with everything the guy does. I don't agree with every plan he comes up with. but still, his vision, and the fact that I think he values the human race getting into space somehow more than he values getting rich. I mean, he has gotten rich, and I think he likes being rich. But at the same time, I think that, just getting the human race into space is what he wants, and he doesn't care about the rest of it. Yeah, that we can turn the cup into a rocket engine. Yes, I'll be interested in getting some instructions as we get closer to 40,000 subscriptions. Kilo Power can be very versatile and adaptable. Oops, I just went by, I just lost it. Says Timothy, if the tech is openly shared. I would be interested if you could share a link on that on here. That would be really cool, Timothy. We do try to put some links on the questions and answers portion. I might do a video on that. Yeah, Peroxix, hello. Peroxis, I'm not sure exactly how you pronounce that, but thank you very much for being here. Okay, so is there any like religious space organization, multiple religions with an interest in space stuff? There's a cult in Africa, says another space nut who had its aim set on space. What an interesting idea, given the fact that it would be easier to get to orbit from many parts of Africa than just about any place on the planet. It'd be nice if they had some money behind them, depending, of course, on what their religious objectives are. Okay, Punic Wars, using it with inflatable modules like Bigelow or actually Sierra Nevada seems to have inherited Bigelow technology. We'll save a lot of unnecessary mass if we use the Starship as the original concept of the space shuttle. Yes, Punic Wars. I've talked a lot about that. The concept of using the Starship to get lighter objects like the Bigelow inflatable habitats into space, use it to overcome Earth's gravity, and then to move on with those inflatable modules and actually travel interplanetary with those. Just simply because they're lighter and they can carry larger amounts of volume. Cyclonic says we need less Jeff Bezos. Yes, I would agree. We don't need people like him that are just, who are insanely rich and yet really kind of slowing down the private space industry. The Sabre engine, says Ryan, is one that's not too far away from production. Ramjet and rocket engines all in one, so we could see the return of space planes. I would be very interested in seeing something on the Sabre engine. That would be very interesting. Jeff Who. Yes, we definitely need to be saying that a lot. Jeff Who. I want to see Scientology's spaceship and the Ark from the Expanse. Yes, that the Mormons had in that one. That was an interesting. That was an interesting episode when they stole the Mormons' space ark. That was something else, and in the end, it didn't really do them any good to steal the Mormon space ark. That was all very interesting plot. Geez, and I'm giving away spoilers. I should have said spoilers first. Quantum Ramjet paper. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. There's a paper out on the Quantum Ramjet. So yeah, another subject. Have we talked about Vasimir? We have not, Cyclonics, and that I think is a really promising form of propulsion if we get fusion power. Power is the big issue. For those who are not familiar with Vasimir, what it is accelerating a neutral, ionizing, and then accelerating a neutral fuel to close to the speed of light. By using electromagnetic waves to ionize it and such, and it takes a huge amount of power in order to accomplish all of this, but it generates crazy speeds. We are talking about getting to the outer solar system in a few months. So yes, they've been working on Vasimir for a long time, trying to make it work with fission power. But so far, we haven't been able to accomplish that. Oh, and there's a link on Zambia's Forgotten Space Program and the Backyard Space Race. So yeah, how about that? How is Vasimir different from ion drives? I would say what makes it different is the method by which they both ionize and drive out the ions. I guess that is the difference involved in it is the huge amount of power that they use in order to. It is another form of ion drive, but they also call it a plasma drive. It involves so much power that it actually makes the ions into a sort of high energy plasma that is driven out of the nozzle at a very, very high speed. So it is kind of an ion engine, but it has certain differences. And it provides a tremendous amount of initial thrust. It's not the your typical ion engine that takes forever to get up to acceleration. It's something that provides tremendous amounts of thrust right off the bat. The kilopower and ion drive concept is brilliant. Well, there's some more. And thank you. That's another space nut just put out a link on it. Vasimir, by the way, stands for Variable Specific Impulse Magnetoplasma Rocket. So thank you. I appreciate that. So yeah, radio waves are actually what it does use. I appreciate you putting that up there. Another space. It's been so long since I've thought about Vasimir. Radio waves in order to ionize and also heat the propellant to create the plasma. So, we could call it an ion drive, or you could also call it a plasma drive, which, for all of you who remember Buck Rogers in the 25th century, they had plasma drive, although I don't think they knew what they were talking about when they were mentioning it. But in any event, so yeah, Fremrick goes back to ion drives depend on as much electrical energy as you can generate. With solar, it's not very effective in the outer solar system. 10 by 100 kilowatts electrical kilopower units will provide a megawatt of Hall effect thruster drive, or for Vasimir, kilopower is current tech as well. Very interesting. Could that work with Vasimir? I'm sure that, like I say, they're working hard on that. They've been working on it for quite some time. If they manage to master Vasimir, that's something that's going to give us the solar system, the entire solar system, quite easily. Okay, so and the Saber engine, Ryan just put up a link on that too. So once again, all this is on the Discord server. So if you're a member of Discord, you have access to all these links that are being put up as well. And by the way, it's pretty cheap. It's only $3 to be a paid $3 a month. That's it. And I do 4 of these a week, 75 cents an episode. So a live stream. It's pretty cheap to be able to contribute and all the benefits you get out of being a member. We have a fair number of people watching, so that's one of the reasons why I put that up. Once again, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Okay, Punic Wars talks about kilopower is low power. Don't think it can use it for Vasimir, as the power involved is about 10 kilowatts. Yeah, I think that the discussion was using a whole bunch of them in order to provide the power. Hard to say, but yeah, it's once again, that's why I like having these discussions, so that we can bounce ideas around about all of this. And okay, warp drives fall into the category of reactionless drives. Is there any hope for other such drives as the EM drive, says Cyclonic? There's been a lot of talk about the EM drive. Can we make this work? Yes, we have over 200 people watching, or we did a little while ago. Once again, to our audience, thank you so much for showing up. And for watching this. So yeah, it's is there any hope for other such drives, such as the EM drive? I don't know. I hate to be so non-committal on this, but the EM drive is such a weird one. One that's providing thrust out of nothing. That's a tough one. So, Spaceman Dan, hello from Utah. Wow, you're up early, aren't you? Thank you so much for joining our discussion. I really appreciate it. So, yeah, to get back into it, these really advanced forms of propulsion that have a lot of debate as to whether or not they're even possible. Those are some tough ones. I think more research and more effort should be put into it. But nevertheless, it's hard to say, whether or not this sort of thing would ever be possible, or if we're looking not at the next 100 years, but the next 1,000, to come up with these kinds of ideas. Okay, so we have Peanut Wars typing at the moment, but once again, and thank you, by the way, all you folks who are participating and contributing to this discussion. This is awesome. Okay, Punagora says the biggest advantage is kilopower is the simplicity of the system, low cost, and the fact that the energy is constant for about 25 years. The energy, however, for Vasimir is very high. So we're looking at 100 tons just for the reactors. That is true. Starship, 100 tons into orbit. Yeah, I guess it depends on how big of a Vasimir drive you're going to build and how much power it needs. Once again, it's hard to beat the system when it comes to mass and to energy. The more mass you got, the more energy you need. And by the way, if you're starting to move to relativistic speeds, that's where it starts getting even worse. Although there is one way to beat the system, and that's with solar or photon drive, as I've talked about in the past. I'm a big fan of that one, and I'll tell you why. It would require a very large laser array in orbit in order to drive a large solar sail up to extreme speeds. Space makes more sense because if you put it on the ground, it's got to go through all that atmosphere. That same system could also be used to deflect incoming asteroids, and also when it's not driving spaceships, it could be turned back and used to provide power to Earth. So there's a lot of uses for photon drives. I'm a big fan of that. I really think that that could be our future of developing ships that are capable. You do need really big sails, and you need advanced materials in order to do it. But still, the Planetary Society has successfully tested something like this at a very modest degree, but they still have successfully deployed a sail. So now we need to see about deploying a sail that we can propel with lasers. Solar lasers, says Punic Wars. Yeah, something that would either focus the energy of the sun or solar panels providing the energy, either one. Lasered solar sails for humans or just probes, says Cyclonics. I think for humans. There have been a number of designs that have been proposed, some of them involving really big ships. We're talking thousands of tons that have been proposed. Those are a little ridiculous, but still thousands of tons of mass being driven by solar energy and a 50 gigawatt laser array. 50 gigawatts, a huge amount of power. But nevertheless, yeah, it definitely could carry humans, and not just in the solar system, but to the stars. That has been proposed. It's a very interesting idea. And I've included that. If you go to my episode called Photon Starship, I put that out like a month ago or something like that. I've got a lot of information about how that could be used for humans. How do you return the energy or the ship from its destination? As far as if we're talking about, I think we're talking about the lasers driving the ship to its destination. How do you return it from there? Yeah, that is an issue. Obviously, it would require in situ. It would require in situ lasers at the destination as well. So you would need to set up a network. You would need to set up a network of lasers all over the solar system in order to be able to accomplish that. Mars and Earth, for example, would both have to have a laser sail setup, but they both would be useful, not just in terms of propulsion. The lasers in Martian orbit could provide energy to a Martian colony, and also protect a Martian colony from incoming asteroids, incoming meteors. So there's a lot of reasons to develop that sort of thing. Framrick says, turn a comet nucleus or an icy asteroid into a starship. Bring your own fuel supply. Very slow acceleration. You can use cryogenics or generation methods to survive the journey. An icy asteroid. Yeah, that's well, there's a lot of them out there. There's a lot of huge C-class asteroids. As a matter of fact, the biggest asteroid in the solar system is a C-class asteroid series. And so, yeah, it does come with its own fuel. Plus, everything else. It comes with its own water supply. It comes with its own air, that sort of thing. How do you stop a solar sail says going ballistic? Well, yeah, that's what I pointed out, is you decelerate with a laser array at the receiving end. It requires that you build quite a network. Now, if we're talking interstellar, yes, Framrick just brought that up. Solar sail ships can stop by using the target star bounce back method, using lasers or microwaves to decelerate. And that's actually, if you go to my Photon Starship episode, once again, the method of deceleration is laid out in that particular design. Using a bounce back method of sails that detach, well, maybe not completely detached, but move in front of the ship, and then you bounce the lasers back in on the ship's solar sails to start decelerating. But you can also use the target star to slow you down. And there are some equations that have been put forward about decelerating solar sail ships at the destination. So in any event, and I think I have all of that linked in the description of my Photon Starship episode. Is Sirius considered to be an asteroid or a dwarf planet, or both? I do believe that Sirius is considered to be a dwarf planet, but I'm not positive. I think it is. It comprises 70% of the mass of the entire asteroid belt, so it's pretty doggone huge. But in any event, kind of hard to say. Laser on the moon, the Death Star, says Ryan. Yes, indeed. And of course, that becomes a little bit scary. Could you weaponize something like that? Yeah, maybe. It's a little scary. Yes, it is a dwarf planet. I was correct in that when I said that it was a dwarf planet. Thank you, Punic Wars. Okay, FHM Consulting. Hello. And I'm sorry that you're coming in so late in this process, because this is an abbreviated episode. I need to say this again. I'm very sorry, but I'm taking my son mountain biking, and I'm going to need to leave early today. So I do apologize. It's the first time I've cut one of my live streams short, but I don't have a choice. So if you flip the solar panels from a solar farm, you can target a point in space. Multi-megawatt solar farms are becoming common. Yes. So yeah, once again, I'm a fan of it just because it can be used for a lot of purposes besides just propulsion. But that's just me. It's one of my favorites. The laser on the moon. Yes, the Alan Parsons Project from Austin Powers. The Alan Parsons Project. The Death Star. Okay, that's not a moon. That's a space station. Says, could laser sails somehow be controlled at a 1G constant acceleration for prolonged journeys? Says Jemio. Yeah. I think that it definitely could. We've already talked about doing that with Breakthrough Starshot, accelerating those. I think even beyond 1G, but I think that the constant acceleration has been talked about with Breakthrough Starshot and getting probes to Proxima Centauri. So, although the proposal for the big 70,000 ton Starship that's powered by a solar sail, that one reaches speeds of 50% of the speed of light. Pretty crazy. But nevertheless, the physics all work for it. The engineering, that's something a little different. Series in the Expanse looks kick-ass. Yes, indeed it does. And it is an obvious place for us to be going. And by the way, that is on NASA's plans. Post Mars, NASA plans to go to Ceres. That is their next objective for a manned mission. Is Ceres after Mars. So they're definitely interested in expanding out into the solar system. And I did an episode about that one too, by the way. Tom says, could you use some kind of photon bomb in front of the sail, maybe a drone ship that's launched in front of the main sail ship to slow it down? Yes, Tom, actually, that is sort of similar to what this fellow, and once again, I'm forgetting his name, but he proposed. And once again, it is linked. I keep talking about that Photon Starship episode. Check it out because his study is linked in there. But in any event, it is sort of like that, reflecting something off of a drone ship to decelerate it. Of course, once again, if you bounce lasers off of it, it's going to accelerate in front of the ship. So there are some drawbacks to that. Okay, up the Planetary Society, a link has just been provided for Light Sail 2 mission control, which is keeping track of what's going on with Light Sail 2. And once again, I can't stand Bill Nye, and it's a travesty that he's in charge of the Planetary Society. But nevertheless, I think that they've got a really good idea there, and I'm glad that they did manage that. With Timothy, with probes, you have no organics to work about. I think we can still learn a lot from robot probes. I agree, Timothy. We should be sending those things out nonstop. They should be our reconnaissance. They should be our exploration. The Europa Clipper, for example, is a really good idea. As a matter of fact, putting humans on Europa has lots of problems associated with it. We may always have to use robot probes when we're talking about some objectives. So yeah, I agree with you. The robots are definitely what they talked about is bots before boots. That's something that NASA has at the Kennedy Space Center. That's NASA's philosophy, bots before boots, and I totally agree. That is what we should be doing first. Ryan's talking about something called a rotating detonation engine. Interesting. An engine combined of multiple mini explosions to create thrust. How about that? A proposed engine using pressure gain combustion. I am very intrigued with that. I'm going to have to look that up too. And once again, these discussions, they're what lead me to come up with the episodes that I do, like Rocket Lab, for example. I created that episode because I had one participant after another asking me to do something about Rocket Lab. I was resistant because I just thought of them as a small sat company, that was exploiting this little niche, and that's all they had to do. And boy, was I wrong. And I'm glad that I did look into it because man, they're doing a lot of exciting stuff to talk about. So in any event, yes, Bill Nye and Neil deGrasse Tyson. For me, sorry, I just kind of lost that from a link, but Cyclonics, yes, slightly tilt me with their animosity to human exploration. I actually find it completely disgusting, Cyclonics. It really irritates me because these people are the face of space science to most people. When we're talking about the average person who has any interest in space science, these are the guys. And yet they're talking about how humans will never colonize any place. It's irresponsible. It is so irresponsible for them to be doing that. And it's one reason why I find it to be so annoying that they do what they do. We need a von Neumann replicator probe.
Yes, the von Neumann probe is something that we've talked a lot about. Well, I don't know if we've talked a lot about it, but one that I've read a lot about. Von Neumann probes are self-replicating probes that go out to the galaxy and create duplicates of themselves. You send out one to one solar system, it gets the necessary raw materials to make another one of itself. It goes on to two systems, it goes to four, it goes to eight. Within a certain amount of time, we have von Neumann probes in every star system in the galaxy. I think that's a hell of an idea. And who knows if we have a von Neumann probe from somebody else in our own solar system. Very briefly, I'm going to talk about that. This is a sort of a weird thing, but there is a phenomenon that comes up with a radio bounce back. We think that it's caused by atmospherics, but we're not sure. When we send out messages and 10 seconds, 12 seconds later, that message comes back to us. And, we're thinking it's some sort of atmospheric effect with radio or something like that that causes it. But it has been postulated that it's actually a von Neumann probe duplicating what we're saying and communicating back to us. If there were a von Neumann probe in our solar system from another species, we would not know about it. It would be looking for a needle in a haystack, would be child's play by comparison, unless it really made a serious effort to announce its presence to us with a very strong signal. But if it was just there keeping an eye on us, we wouldn't know. We would have no idea. It would be entirely too small for us to detect. Okay, FHM Consulting just put in a detonation engine, link from Scott Manley, who does some really great work. The Sagan effect, says Going Ballistic. Timothy, and once again, oh boy, we're running out of time. This is so sad, and we have so many, so I'm going to try to get through these. Bill Nye and Neil, yeah, I respect their knowledge too, but nevertheless, conceited and short-sighted. Yeah, I agree with that. Especially short-sighted. We need to be colonizing the solar system, and we don't need people like them telling people that we shouldn't. And then Sagan, yeah, he was against human exploration until he was for it. That is true, says Going Ballistic. And at that point, the damage was done. The von Neumann probe in our own system, the Bracewell probe, a hypothetical concept, and it could be waiting for us. Yes, it's quite possible. Nye went to Cornell when Sagan was there. That's very interesting. I didn't know that. I didn't know that Bill Nye went to Cornell University when Carl Sagan was a professor there. And this is where we're going to have to end things with Cyclonic's comment. The von Neumann probe is the moon Phoebe. It always is in every show. Yeah, who knows? Hard to say. But who knows if we have a von Neumann probe somewhere in our solar system. If we do, it's going to teach us a lot. So in any event, I'm sorry to be cutting things off like this, but I've got obligations to my son, and family first, as Going Ballistic said. Thank you so much for that. So in any event, guys, until we are ready to make our step and actually build a next generation form of propulsion, and that kind comes soon enough, because we're not going to be able to properly explore the solar system until we have a next generation form of propulsion. So until we actually have that, I urge all of you to stay angry about space.